Hello, dear course participants. This is Jos Streng. I'm going to try and share with you some of the experiences we've had in Rotterdam in trying to make our city logistics more sustainable. The main things I'd like to talk to you about are three pillars, or you could say three legs, we use to stand steadily on the ground. So we need three boots on the ground. And the first is know what you're talking about. What do you mean when you talk about city logistics? The second, how to involve stakeholders. The importance of that cannot be overestimated. And finally, monitoring and adapting your policy. Okay, let's take a look at this first pillar. Know what you're talking about. I've listed here four aspects of that which I think are relevant and also relevant in the framework of the LEAD project. Firstly, you have to start by numbers. Knowing what you're talking about means knowing how many vehicles take how much goods into and out of the city, including waste. And without any idea of that, it's really no use to develop a policy. So that's, I think, the main, and therefore it's the first point I mentioned. Secondly, this transport of goods is not important in itself. It serves the economy, the people, the companies in the city. So you have to find out, and I've listed here, develop relationships with related policy fields, such as your colleagues of spatial planning and socio-economic development. Every city has a different way of organizing its policy, but it's crucial that you find out what your field of interest has to do with the work of your colleagues, so that you can be stronger together and develop a joint view of what do we mean by city logistics. And then thirdly, what do you mean by sustainable city logistics? Make this very concrete. In Rotterdam, we have chosen for two aspects. Firstly, efficiency, because of the scarcity of urban space. So use the vehicles and other assets as efficiently as possible so they don't occupy more space than necessary. On the other hand, make sure that there is enough room for these transport of goods to be carried out. And finally, that's I think, one of the key points we have in common with people doing the LEAD project. Use simulation tools to describe your city as a kind of logistic machine, which can help you to develop policies, analyze them, and evaluate them. When you can visualize and quantify the effects of what you intend to do, then you have a very powerful tool to build your policy on. Okay, and now for pillar number two, involving stakeholders. Of course, you have to be aware if you're going to develop a policy, this is going to mean something for the people and the companies in your city. They are going to have to change their ways. And you cannot, of course, impose on them any regulations or rules without knowing what it means for them. And the best way to find out, of course, is to talk with them. And even better, um, you have to try and develop a policy that is understood and accepted by this group of stakeholders, so they know what is expected of them, and they are confident that they can meet the requirements this policy is going to impose on them. In our city in Rotterdam, we have announced the introduction of a zero-emission zone for city logistics by 2025, and this is, of course, a huge change for very many companies. And then the second point, of course, is you have to make sure that you have means to help the companies that have made you understand that they cannot make the change without, for instance, a subsidy for buying an emissionless vehicle, or you have to help them perhaps to share space or other assets. And of course, in your policy also, you have to be aware of the things you strive for. Your goals should be realistic in the sense that you can only set goals for the area of influence that you have control over. If you cannot change certain conditions, then they are a boundary condition. For instance, the availability of enough electricity in the power grid that is necessary for the transition to electric vehicles, but it's outside our direct realm of influence. So of course we have to develop a relationship uh, with the network company, but we just have to tell them this is what we need to make the transition we're striving for, and please let us know if you can accommodate this. And if we don't find it out, we have to find other ways. I'll come to that later. Okay, here comes the last boot I'd like to talk to you about, and that's monitoring and adapting your policy. It's all no rocket science, but of course you have to define your KPIs, your key performance indicators, which determine your policy and describe how you're going to measure them. You have to carry out those measurements and compare the observations with the expected level, the required level. And if you're lagging behind, if you're staying behind, of course you have to change something, or you won't achieve your goal. And although, of course, adapting your goal is one of the ways you can make the adaptations, usually you maintain your goal and you intensify your activity or you change your priorities. And of course, if you find out that, for instance, the electricity grid is hindering or the financial factors are hindering the progress, um, then you have to make sure that you knock on the right door or you put a request on someone's desk to indicate we are not going to achieve our goals unless this or this condition is met by you. And then sometimes you have to escalate, of course, to go higher in the hierarchy. And that's not the easiest part of your work, but of course it's crucial. If you stand for something, you have to, you have to take action which is required. And this is the core of what I have to tell you. I may have some extra illustrations, but perhaps it's best if we have a one-on-one talk about that. My communication data will be visible at the end of the presentation. Thank you for your attention, and perhaps we can meet one day in Rotterdam or at any professional convention that we usually visit, for instance, the Polish conference. Good luck in your work, and who knows, this work will bring us in contact in a project or otherwise. Bye bye from Rotterdam.